So gentlemen, question. In 2015, the Manitoba Association of School Superintendents developed a significant position paper focused on mental health. One of the key recommendations from this position paper calls for timely and universal access to mental health professionals for all of Manitoba's children and youth. If elected to office, how would your government respond to the needs of the many waitlisted children and youth who require immediate attention? Mr. Brault, please start us off.
Thank you very much for that question. The Manitoba Liberal Party has actually put together a policy statement on mental health, and as a policy, we wish to include psychological services under the umbrella system of Manitoba Health. So what we are proposing, if elected, is that we will be able to provide early intervention into mental health issues. I had an opportunity both to hold an open house in Charleswood, to bring a professor of psychiatry to my riding, and we had a very good dialogue with the residents of Charleswood about this very issue. Dr. Steinberg said that he sees crisis situations on a daily basis and dealing with this, but to hand that situation over back to a psychologist under a publicly funded system has very limited opportunities. He says there's a fraction of children that actually qualify for that, for psychological services. And was very excited in looking at having this tool of having psychological services provided. So we as a party strongly believe this. We know that this would make a contribution to the welfare, particularly of children, but adults as well. And we as a party feel that that is the way to go. So again, in addressing that, we have put a statement before. We will provide psychological services under the Medicare umbrella and provide those services to all Manitobans that require. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, there's nowhere that I don't go, and you know that I visit a lot of schools, where mental health isn't the first issue that's addressed with me when I walk in the doors of the school. Not really about quality, it's not really about funding, it's not really about relationships, as I talked about earlier, about mental health, the mental health needs of our young people and our students. And so our government has actually responded to those requests and those needs. I think you know that we launched a child and youth mental health strategy last year, a new investment of $1 million that will create community-based interventions and outreach teams for children. We saw just last week a terrible tragedy in the north. Our government was the first to respond. Our government implemented Jordan's principle. Our government sent the crisis support teams up there. That's why we have a new society prevention strategy as well. We need to make sure when we're dealing with our students that we're not simply focused on their academic needs, as important as they are. It's also essential that we deal with their social and emotional needs as well. That's what our government has been committed to through our terms of government, and that's what we're going to be continued focused on going forward. The whole child counts, and unless we work together with you in collaboration to address their academic needs, their social needs, and their emotional needs, then they're going to feel left out and excluded. We believe in an inclusive education system where every kid counts. Thank you.
Mr. Goertzen.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. It's an important question. I think it's worth noting that there are many groups and organizations over the last number of years that have done a very good job in raising the awareness of mental health issues, but also reducing the stigma around mental health. I don't suppose there's anybody in this room who doesn't have a family member that's been impacted by mental illness. I know my family has. And that extends into our schools, and it impacts our teachers, and it impacts all those who are working within our schools. I know that a resolution came forward, and there was specific requests coming from the Manitoba school boards, and I do appreciate some of the requests that were asked for. He spoke specifically about ensuring that there was education for teachers and awareness for teachers. I think that's important. I know many teachers already have a clear understanding of when they see some of their students in their classrooms who are facing issues that are related to mental health. They recognize that. But we can go further. We can do more to ensure the teachers have that support. Because every teacher cares about every child in their classroom and wants what's best for them. And we want to help equip them to ensure that they know how to get that support. It's also about working with the regional health authorities. I know in our area there's a struggle sometimes to get support, financial support for those who are working in mental health in our regional health authorities, and that's been happening for the last number of years, that concern and that lack of support. So it's not just a situation in the education field or in our schools. We want to work with our regional health authorities and those professionals to make sure they have the support and they're providing that support within the schools. So a couple of things. Working with our regional health authorities to make sure professionals are available locally, but also working with our teachers to ensure that they have the support and the knowledge to recognize and to deal with mental health when it appears in our classes, because it's appearing, I'm sure, in every class in Manitoba. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the rebuttals will be in the same order. Mr. Brault, we have 1 minute.
Great, thank you. I've had the opportunity over the last few months to go door to door and meet with Manitobans and listen to their issues, and probably the number one issue that comes up is what are we doing about mental health? And it's really difficult at times where a young single parent will say, I have a child that needs help. They fall between the cracks. We don't know where to go. We can't afford, we don't have a plan to bring this particular child to psychological services. How do we deal with this? And so I believe that we need to incorporate it. Mental health is not just a school-age problem. It's preschool and as well as post-school and adult issues. So I, again, think that we will be able to provide a comprehensive solution to this problem.
Thank you. This is the difficulty with everything that the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party are going to articulate for you today is both are putting on the record significant funding cuts to public education. The Liberals have already said they're going to cut the health and education levy, which will come to the tune of $471 million. That's going to affect services in schools, that's going to affect programming in schools, that's going to affect their ability to be able to deliver on a variety of promises and commitments that really don't add up and don't make sense. In the same fashion, Mr. Pallister is on record for saying that he's going to cut $550 million from the budget. He's already put it out there that he's going to cut the PST when is up for debate, but he's going to do that. That's $300 million. There isn't one investment that they're going to be able to make that we haven't already done. In fact, the result will be significant cuts to public school funding again.
Mr. Goertzen. I know that James, or that Mr. Allum is putting forward information that's not correct. There's been no such cuts proposed. In fact, we didn't even have a budget this year in Manitoba. First time in the history of Manitoba that a budget wasn't brought forward, instead an economic statement was brought forward. So that's not true. But you know, I believe in what Jack Layton said. I think that optimism is better than fear, so I'll remain optimistic. The issue around mental health is not just in the classroom, but also extends into the home, because children might be displaying mental health issues, but sometimes they're dealing with it at home as well. And they're coming to school, so they may not themselves be demonstrating mental health issues, but they might be dealing with parents and those who are at home as well. So we need to ensure that we are identifying not just what individual children are dealing with themselves, but what they might also be facing at home and how to help and support that.
Thank you. So our second question is from the Manitoba School Board Association. The first response will be from Mr. Allum, followed by Mr. Brault and Mr. Goertzen, and they will rebut in the reverse order to that. So it will be Mr. Goertzen, Mr. Brault, and Mr. Allum. So here's the question. According to a recent home research poll, 7 out of 10 Manitobans continue to believe in the importance of community voice in decisions concerning public schools. If your party is elected to office, will you continue to respect the integrity of community voice through elected school boards? And will school boards retain critical financial autonomy to meet the unique needs of their local communities. So, Mr. Allum.
Well, the answer to that question is categorical, uncategorical. Yes, we do that. We're among the only provinces in Canada that continue to support school boards, to continue to support local autonomy, to continue to provide the opportunity for school boards to go out and raise revenue to fund their own programming, to strengthen the education system in Manitoba. It's important to recognize that other parties will suggest to you that you can do it differently. But the result of that, the experience of that across the country, has been the defunding of public education every single time the system's centralized. We don't agree with that. We want to believe, we work in partnership and collaboration with school boards. We want to be sure that they have the resources necessary. That's why we continue to fund at the rate of economic growth every single year. But at the same time, we want to support them in the decision-making they need to make in order to address, as I said a few times already, the whole child, the academic, the social, and emotional needs of children. We have a record of working in partnership with school boards on a whole range of issues. The best example that I can give you right now is the Task Force on Special Education. That was a broad consensus among a variety of partners in the education system, including all of you represented here today, to come together to reform our special education program. We're going to roll it out with a pilot in Rael. Thank you to Rael for doing that. In the second year, we'll deal a voluntary buy-in, and then in the third year, it'll be mandatory, and we will learn each step of the way, and the resources and funding that's required will be there from the government, because we'll continue to work in partnership with our school boards and our school trustees in order to build an accessible, strong public education system for every Manitoba child.
Thank you for that question. I've had the opportunity over actually the last number of years to interact with the school trustees, both for my children and as well as looking at regarding policy and as well as preparing to meet with you. And overwhelmingly, the trustees play an important part in our community. And I, as well, advocate of having the local decision making. I'm just going to give you an example of a situation where we had a lifetime activity program for our children to do in gym class. But there was no, they were actually using students to transport children. And I had a concern with that. And I was able to meet with my trustee and talk about that situation. I believe that our trustees know the community, know the needs of the community. Regarding financial assessments, in looking at how we fund school boards and looking at using assessments, I believe that we need to keep that in place, but fine-tune it. As we see, Winnipeg 1 has been in a situation where they've had a quite significant underfunding situation, that there should be some sort of cushion to deal with those types of situations. I also believe that, and this is a personal view and not necessarily the party, but that school boards would have the choice of closing schools, and if they will not be put into a financial bind regarding school closures. As a Liberal Party, we are looking at not changing the system, but looking at a course correction. And in education, we do the same thing, a course correction in moving forward. So I thank you for the question.
Mr. Goertzen, you not only get to do the final, but you actually get to rebut right away. This is a real political trick.
I'll say something I disagree with, and then I'll correct myself on
Yes.
Can I call you Paul? Okay, good. Paul raises some good points about the importance of recognizing the work of the school trustees. I know many of you are here today. I get frustrated sometimes as an MLA, not an MLA as of a couple of days ago, but I was. People would come into my constituency office and they would raise issues that were squarely in the jurisdiction of school boards and of trustees. And often they didn't realize that trustees had that role and had those responsibilities, and they're significant responsibilities. One of the most significant responsibilities that we have for elected officials in Manitoba. And I think part of that is because we as elected officials on Broadway need to do a better job of promoting the work that school trustees do and ensuring that people understand that. But that also comes with giving them autonomy and giving them the local decision-making power that's important. Fact is that when we're sitting on Broadway, we don't know everything that's happening in every part of the province. Sometimes as politicians we like to think we do, but we don't. And the best decisions are made at the local level generally because you know what's happening most specifically in your area. Paul mentioned the specific issue of the moratorium on small schools. There are other issues where the provincial government has given specific directive to school boards, and I know that that's made it difficult to manage in your own divisions at times, and sometimes it's put costs on you that weren't reciprocated with funding, and that is a problem. But more than that, it's more than just funding, and it's more than just autonomy, it's also about respect. Because I'm elected, I get elected again, school boards are elected, and you are elected for a reason. You're elected to do your job, and we want to ensure that you have the power to do your job. And I'll correct myself in my rebuttal, I suppose.
Thank you, and I might ask you to respond to the financial autonomy thing too at the same time. Thank you.
Right. And so there's been lots of discussions about how funding can happen. I know that there's been resolutions that there should be funding, for example, up to 80%. That's sometimes been used as the benchmark, and I think that is important. If we're going to make education the number one investment in the future of Manitoba, as our leader Brian Palliser has said it will be, then that funding has to flow. Because we know, as a provincial government, what it can be like when the level of governments at the top of you cut funding and expect that the next level of government is going to make it up. That's difficult. And it's not fair to you as elected officials for those of you who are on school boards. So absolutely, funding has to flow with that. It's not enough to say you're going to have respect, and it's not enough to say you're going to have autonomy, but you have to have the financial resources to be able to do that. Of course, you have your own taxing power, and there's no suggestions that is going to change, but there still has to be support financially from Broadway, and we'll commit to providing that support.
Mr. Brault?
Thank you. Regarding the funding, I noticed that, well, as I look at my tax bill, in a lot of situations, the assessment for the school division is about the same as your taxes. And my concern is as municipal elections take place, that everybody looks to the city council or town council, whatever you might be, of the taxes, but very few people actually even question their trustee on the assessment. We're looking at large amounts of money. And I believe that it's important that there's more of a dialogue with the trustees on how taxes are levied. Now you talk about the ability for school divisions to levy taxes.
I think it's important. Time's up for it.
Well, it's quite a remarkable thing to have both of my colleagues talking about funding when in fact their parties vote against the education budget every single year. Mr. Goertzen's party has been quite, their record is quite open and transparent for, we only need to go back to when Mr. Palliser was at the cabinet table, cuts and freezes throughout the 1990s. Faced with difficult economic circumstances, they made a choice to cut. Faced with that same circumstance in 2008 and 2009, funding for the public education system increased not only at the rate of economic growth, but by 5% in 2008 and 5% in 2009. No economic recession was going to prevent us from doing our job in investing in education and making sure that our kids have every opportunity to thrive, to grow, to develop, and to succeed. So it takes a fair amount of gumption for two parties, one of which is going to cut the health and education.
But not to worry, you're going to be up right away. Our third question is from the Manitoba Teachers Society, and the first response will be from Mr. Allum, followed by Mr. Brault and Mr. Goertzen. So, gentlemen, families struggling with poverty are often preoccupied with attending to basic survival issues, which is a barrier for parents' involvement in their children's education. Youth from lower income quintiles are less likely to graduate from high school on time. The View from Here 2015, Manitobans Call for a Renewed Poverty Reduction Plan, contains key recommendations to improve the social and economic conditions of low-income families. This includes improving access to affordable housing, training, and good jobs. What will you do to reduce poverty in Manitoba? And the rebuttals will be Mr. Goertzen, Mr. Brault, Mr. Allum, in that order. But Mr. Allum, you start.
Well, thank you, John. Well, listen, I'm a New Democrat because I believe in fighting poverty. That's what my DNA, political DNA, is all about. Our government restored the National Child Benefit several years ago to ensure that every Manitoban has access to it. It was cut by my colleague to my left. We are the only party that has supported an increase to the minimum wage year in and year out. That's been voted against by my colleague to the left, who actually probably should be on the right. We developed a rent-assist program that not only deals for people on EIA, but also for the working poor, to make sure that they have enough rent support so that they have money in their pockets to be able to buy the food and additional things they need in their family. We've made a commitment to a universal child care system in order to ensure that every Manitoba family has access to affordable public child care. But listen, folks, the great transformative element of getting out of poverty relies on education. Our government has been about education from the very beginning. We're going to continue to be about education going right now and into the future. And that's because of the relationships we build with you. That's because of ongoing funding supports that we have with you. That's because we want to build an inclusive education system for every Manitoba child. And it's because we need to work together as partners in the education system to serve the people that really matter the most, our students and their families.
Thank you. Mr. Brault?
Thank you. I'm often asked why I would take the leap into politics, and I'll tell you the main reason is that I've been a volunteer for Winnipeg Harvest for the past 5 years. And I've driven around the city, and I've seen the poverty. I've seen our Winnipeg Harvest warehouse double in size. I have seen the lineups at the Indian Ladies Friendship Center, at Logan, Freight House, and this is unacceptable. And I have to ask myself, and after 16 years of an NDP government, why is it getting worse? The Liberal Party proposes that we do case studies of a study done in Dauphin in the 1970s called MINCOM. And MINCOM was a study done by two parties in the 70s to take a look at poverty in Dauphin. And if you have a chance, Google Evelyn Forget has the report on there. We saw significant reduction in poverty. We saw higher high school graduation rates. We saw a better trained workforce. And we believe that if we study this issue, rather than talking about these rent-assist programs, EIA programs and such, to take a look at a minimum basic income, and then addressing the situation at the front end, rather than trying to do band-aid situations at the rear end. So as a Liberal Party, we understand that, and we will look at, study, and look at rolling out a MINCOM type program. 2 case studies first, one within the city and one in a rural situation to examine that.
Thank you. Hello?
I'm going to move my podium over to the right. The way James is swinging that right handle, that might be dangerous. I understand why he's angry. It's been a tough year for the NDP, tough for Manitobans too. But he might also be upset because poverty has increased under the NDP over their term. There's more kids using food banks than before. I was president of a food bank, started up a food bank in my region a number of years ago because I wanted to see kids make sure that they weren't hungry when they were going to school or when they were at home, and that's happening more. 55% of Aboriginal youth don't graduate high school in time. It's getting worse, not better, under the NDP government. So I understand why James might be angry, might be upset. But there are things that have to be done. They can be done. I mentioned my own personal experience with education, so I leave that with you, but housing is important. I was able to find, my mother was able to find, government housing is important. We have that in communities, and communities that are supportive of those who are living in poverty. We need more of that in different communities, in different parts of the province as well. Having a trusted adult in the life of every child is important. We would hope that would be the parent, of course, but it may not always be, but there has to be a trusted adult in the life of at-risk youth and those who are living in poverty. Leaving more money in the pockets of those who are struggling is also very important. We've committed to raising the basic personal exemption, which is a fancy way of saying when people start to pay taxes on the income they earn. And the higher you raise it, the more money people can earn before they raise taxes. That's important. So we've committed to raising that basic personal exemption, leaving more money in the pockets of those who are struggling. So education, yes. Housing, what happens at home, having a trusted adult, and also leaving more pockets in the parents of those who are dealing with poverty and might have at-risk youth.
Thank you. Mr. Goertzen, you get to rebut.
Okay.
By the way, he knows the order.
I do know the order, and I should have reminded myself, John, I put all the responsibility on me. The issue around poverty will never go away unless you have a government that's committed to ensuring that people can earn more without the government taking that money. Issue of minimum wage, Mr. Allum talks about it, and minimum wage is important, but of course that is money that also the government gets because they still end up taxing some of that. Leaving money in the pockets of people before they get taxed is the clearest, the most direct, and the most impactful way of ensuring that those who are struggling can keep that money. I know for my mom, when she was a single mother and she was working at a minimum wage job many years ago, that would have been meaningful. That would have been more meaningful. Her minimum wage wasn't enough to feed my sister and I, and that's why we were lucky to have the government housing. But there has to be more money left in the pockets of individuals. I thought I only had 1 minute. I'm at 2 minutes now.
I know.
I don't want to cheat, you know.
Yeah. Our ethics officer just changed that. Mr. Brault, you only get 1 minute.
Yes, I know. Thank you. I actually want to rebut regarding the health and higher education levy that Mr. Allum put forward. This tax, and commonly known as the payroll tax, it will only be implemented once the budget is balanced. So we are not in our first term going to propose to take over $700 million out of the budget. And so business has said that this is a catalyst to spark more investment in Manitoba, and so I want to just go on the record regarding that. And it does not go into specific educational purposes. It goes into general revenues. Regarding poverty, again, I believe that we need to take a look at a multifaceted approach, and the Liberal Party is willing to look at that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. People who know me know that I'm not actually angry. I'm merely passionate about education, and I think everybody in this room is passionate about education. I only wish we could get Kelvin to be a little bit more passionate about education instead of worrying about if he can put extra dollars in rich people's pockets. We're not waiting to do any more experiments on income. We're actually putting the floor under people now by the very things that I described: the minimum wage, the national child benefit, rent assist, more housing. We're the only government that builds housing. The federal government, Mr. Harper, didn't build a stitch of housing, didn't even build any kind of housing during his term in office, yet Mr. Goertzen feels free to defend him each and every day in the House, and I'm sorry for that, but that's what he does. Paul tries to suggest that they're not going to do the health and education levy right away. Well, guess what, folks? That cut, paid, primarily 90% paid by banks and big corporations, is on the way.
Not in mid-stroke. So the fourth question, and the order in this case will be Mr. Brault, Mr. Goertzen, Mr. Allum. and actually the rebuttal in the same order. So our fourth question is from the Manitoba Association of School Business Officials. Gentlemen, it is a telling fact that across Manitoba, many schools were built to meet the needs of a generation who themselves are now beginning to retire. Meanwhile, pressures upon this aged infrastructure continue to increase to meet modern requirements relating to accessibility, small class sizes, and expanded child care spaces. What is your party's plan to address ongoing and growing deficits in capital support to school divisions? Starting with Mr. Goertzen. Oh, sorry, Mr. Brault.
Thank you.
Now I got it. Can't believe that.
Thank you for the question. Regarding the rehabilitation of schools, we look at infrastructure spending not to be simply for roads, bridges. We look at infrastructure spending to be allocated to things like schools, like child care spaces. We, as a party, also understand the importance of looking at the technical age and making sure that our schools are wired for the technical times that we're in, as well as looking at our northern schools that still are far behind there. We need to, as well, take a look at implementing new ways of we have our full-size kindergarten that we know that has to be accommodated. And I think as we took a look at Bill 2 and Bill 7 that it just went through committee and just passed, that we look at the smaller class sizes and as well as the protection of childcare spaces in school, that we could use that to work together, including our full-day kindergarten, to redesign our schools in such a way that it would incorporate all of these. I don't think it is a one or the other. I believe that these could work together as we look at the schools of the future and incorporate, especially at the lower end. We talked about the importance of getting to our children at a young age, that as we build that infrastructure, making sure that we design it for those types of issues that we're dealing with. I know that I've heard the concern of child care spaces in the local school is about to be canceled, and there was concern at the door that I hear about that. Thank you.
Obviously, capital is one of the most important things that we have to address when we're talking about schools, because it's important that teachers are in schools, and they are the most critical part of our schools. They need a place to teach. My son has been in a hut, I guess they call them, or a temporary classroom, for a couple of years. And as far as temporary classrooms go, it's pretty good. But it's not a classroom, and it's not exactly the same. And during the winter, they're shuffling in and out, and there are sometimes different safety concerns that parents have as a result of that. And I know that that's the case in many areas around the province, and I've heard that from parents as well. So we need to ensure that there's a long-term funding program for capital for schools that is predictable, that school divisions, when they're applying for new schools, that they know what the process is going to be, that they know that the process is going to be based on need and on merit. Too often it happened in my own division. New schools weren't built until there were significant safety concerns in some circumstances, and until schools are bursting at the seams. And we're fortunate that we have wonderful trustees who advocated hard. But it is difficult sometimes to get those schools when you really should have them, and often it takes far too long, and there are far too many difficult circumstances for schools. So you need a long-term plan. You need a clear process that school divisions know when they can apply and what they're applying for and what the criteria and the merit are for. Now, John, I went 30 seconds over on my rebuttal by a technological error, so I'm going to leave 30 seconds on the clock because I'm all about fairness.
Just what we expected.
Not much to say when it comes to capital supports for schools.
Okay. Mr. Allum, you started early.
The realities in
Go on, start again.
But the record is clear, and we have to be clear about that. There wasn't a stitch of capital support the last time Mr. Pallister was in government, when he was sitting at the cabinet table. By contrast, over $1 billion have been put into capital supports for schools as a result of our government. 35 new schools across the province. One in Mr. Goertzen's riding, he didn't show up for the opening, sorry, he wasn't there. One in Morton Winkler, a DSFM school in Thompson, another proposed school in Brandon, all across this province. New schools and repurposed schools. In addition to that, new science labs, new gyms, childcare centers. All of the basic needs of schools have been addressed by capital supports from our government. It's what we've done and what we're going to continue to do. And then add on to that the small class size initiative from kindergarten to grade 3 resulted in 380 new teachers in partnership with school divisions. That's a success, but it also resulted in $29 million more for capital improvements, smaller class sizes, more teachers, and better classrooms are the keys to success for our education system going forward. By contrast, when you're going to cut $500 million from the budget, you're simply not going to be able to do it, and your performance record in the past tells you it's not going to happen. When you're going to cut $470 million from the health and education levy, you're not going to see it either, folks.
Thank you very much. So we'll reset it to 1 minute. This time you're only getting 1 minute. Yes, you're on, Kelvin.
So, of course, the question wouldn't have come forward if everything was perfect, as Mr. Allum seems to suggest. There are many difficulties with capital funding, and they continue because there isn't a long-term plan. There isn't that commitment to what the criteria is, and there isn't an assurance and a clarity of when schools are actually going to be prioritized and built. And that has to happen. There has to be that assurance. I am happy that we were able to get a school finally after a number of significant issues and concerns within my area. I would have loved to have been there if I hadn't made a promise to my niece months in advance that I would be with her that day. I actually believe in keeping my promises. I know Mr. Allum might make fun of me and be derogatory that I kept a promise to my niece, but I'm proud that I did that. I would have also kept a promise not to raise the PSC had I made it, unlike the
MVP. Reset in 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Allum continues to talk about ancient history about 18 years ago, and I think as a party we're looking ahead, and we want to bring forward new ideas regarding the capital funding. We would maintain the funding, and as a party that has not had an opportunity to actually look at the complete books, we would have to take a look at that regarding increasing funding. I do have a concern of my friend from the Progressive Conservative Party of lowering that PST and where that funding will go in addition to $100 million. It just simply doesn't add up. So I would welcome to see how those books will balance after removing the 1%. We are committed to maintain that 1% as we understand that it is important to run a fiscal and manage it.
Mr. Allum?
I have to say, I think we've heard about every member of Kelvin's family so far today. It's been him, his mom, his niece, his kids, and that's okay. But that's what you do when you're on a stage like this and you don't have an agenda and you don't have a plan and you're not prepared to say what you're willing to do or not do. I've been crystal clear this morning what our government has done when it comes to funding of schools, whether it's on the operating side, whether it's on the capital side, whether it's on supports for Indigenous education or supports for newcomers or reaching out to Syrian refugees. We're going to continue to build new schools. We're going to continue to build gyms and science labs. We're going to continue to prepare our children for learning in the 21st century. Mr. Pallister likes to go around and say he was a teacher. Yeah, he was a teacher for 2 years, 40-odd years ago. And the 18 years ago that Mr. Brault just talked about matter, because every person in this room remember what the public education system was like when Mr. Pallister was at the cabinet table.
Okay. So our fifth and last question, our fifth and final question, is from the Manitoba Association of Parent Councils. And the first response will be from Mr. Goertzen, followed by Mr. Brault and Mr. Allum, and the rebuttals will be in the same order. So gentlemen, what opportunities do you envision for children in Manitoba, and how does the provincial public education system support your vision? What opportunities do you envision for children? You can restart this for children in Manitoba, and how does the provincial public education system support your vision? Mr. Goertzen.
So let me start by saying I've been a politician for a while. I don't think I've ever had my family attacked in debate. I'm proud of my family, proud of my mom, I'm proud of my wife. Have I talked about her yet? I'm proud of my son, and I'm proud of my niece. And at the beginning of this debate, it was mentioned that we should act like we would at a school trustees board meeting. I got to come to more school trustees board meetings, because I've never seen them behavior like that. I want to say that when it comes to the opportunities that our young people have, it flows from our public education system. As I mentioned in my opening comments, the greatest opportunities that young people have come from a combination of the support they get at home and the support they get at school, because that's where they spend the vast majority of their life, in those two places. And if we don't ensure that our homes are as strong as possible for those who might be at risk, and if we don't ensure that our schools are as strong as possible for our teachers and all those who support them in the education system and within the schools, those opportunities are not going to be there. I want my son, it's okay if I tackle my son, to have the opportunities that I have. And I want him to be able to have every opportunity, whether that's in Manitoba or in other provinces. I hope it's in Manitoba. I'd like it to stay in Manitoba. But I don't want him to be restricted. He's in the public education system. He's treated respectfully. The teachers are wonderful to him. And I think that he's on the path to have those opportunities. But I know there are many kids who aren't, who don't have that. I think about Aboriginal kids. And I think about those who might be in certain parts of Manitoba where they're more impoverished. And that is a challenge that we need to address, but it starts with our education system, because that can be the great equalizer for our young people. And I want that to be not just for my son, but everybody's son and everybody's daughter. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul.
My vision, again, is that we don't leave any children behind. And in my experience of seeing the poverty that we have in this city and along this province and in the north, that we need to deal with that as well. I look at a proud vision. I am proud of the education system that my children went through. I am fortunate to have my children, one who is a teacher and presently teaching in China. I have a daughter who graduated from Oak Park High School and is a registered nurse and an ER nurse at Grace Hospital. And I have another daughter at the University of Winnipeg, and it was through the hard work of everybody in this room that they were able to have that step up, to have a great career, and to be able to take the opportunities that we have in Manitoba. However, I do have some concerns. As I went to a door just a few weeks ago with my daughter Zoe, and a mother said, my child is going into grade 7. They only have a grade 4 reading level. I don't have an assessment. My child falls between the cracks. What can I do? I've tried everything. As we were walking to the next street, my daughter said to me, Dad, when I was in elementary school, I had reading recovery, and I was able to get my reading skills up. When my math skills went behind, I had math recovery. Why is this not happening? I wasn't assessed of having any learning difficulties. I didn't need to have an assessment. Why is this not happening? And I had to explain to my daughter that why aren't these supports in place? And I know that we have a large hard-working group here, but we as a Liberal Party don't want to change anything. We want to course correct. We want to change some things, but we want to course correct things rather than going to one extreme and to the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Listen, our education plan is geared to providing opportunities. We want no wrong doors, no dead ends, and multiple pathways for our students making their way through the education system. The best example of that is the First Year Now program, and you're familiar with it. You can now get your level 1 apprenticeship in school before you finish high school, giving you that pathway for a good job and a good education into the future. But you know, that's just part of it. We've also provided supports for parents on the website, My Kid in School. You can go there, you can see what the curriculum is, you can know how to help your child when you're at home. And by the way, Paul, recovery is still alive and well in our school system. And in addition to that, we have setyourcourse.ca that provides an indication for kids who want to start out in life how they can move through the education system to get the job of their dreams and what educational supports they're going to need. We have a plan. We have demonstrated consistently over our 4 terms of office what we're prepared to do to provide opportunities for young people. But when you don't have a plan, when you don't have the financial supports in place to support kids and opportunities into the future, when you're not really interested in cultivating apprenticeships, when you're not supporting co-op programs, which we have any number of them throughout our education system, when you're not prepared to do those things, when you're only prepared to cut the budget, it'll have an impact on our kids and their opportunities in the future. Don't let that happen.
Thank you. And rebuttals. Mr. Goertzen.
When you look at some of the results that have happened in Manitoba, when the NDP came into power, Manitoba on most tests were 3rd in the country when it comes to literacy, when it comes to math, when it comes to science. Over the time, that's been a steady decline under the NDP. It's dropped to last, and I think we're getting further away from second last, unfortunately, as it gets worse every year. And when the question comes up about opportunity and what our kids are going to be able to do with that opportunity, they have to be able to compete with others, not just in the province, but in other provinces. We are fortunate, I believe, to have some of the best teachers in the country, but the system that have been put on them through the NDP isn't working, and the results show that. And we need to ensure that our kids are doing as well as any other kids in the country. We know they're just as talented. They need to be able to show that within the results, and that's important.
I'd like to as well acknowledge that in Manitoba, the change in, or the increase in high school graduation rates is I think a credit to the government, and I think we should acknowledge that. We were well behind and have moved that forward. I think that's very commendable. However, on the other side, the auditor's report on Aboriginal graduation rates should be a wake-up call that we are leaving a substantial portion of our population, our Indigenous population, behind. And I think it's important that we address that issue and have a comprehensive plan to deal with that. The Auditor General basically said that there's no plan, and we need a plan to deal with this important segment of our population. And we as a Liberal government would actually look at those recommendations and implement them.
Thank you. And Mr. Allum.
Yeah, let's be clear. I don't know that Mr. Goertzen actually knows what the tests that he's talking about are. I'm assuming he's referring to PCAP and PISA, one measure of an education system among many measures that we need to consider when we're determining the quality of our education system. As I said at my opening remarks, I want to celebrate our education system, and we want to build on a model of continuous improvement in order to provide opportunities for our young people. But when you want to have the health and education levy to the tune of $471 million, when you're going to cut $500 million from the budget across the board, it's going to filter down into our education system. It happened before, and it will happen again unless you take it upon yourself to vote and support a progressive education system where every child counts and there are multiple pathways to student.
Thank you. So we've actually come to the close of today's forum, except for the closing remarks. And talk for just a minute so you can prepare yourself more if you'd like. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes. We'll have the same order as this last order. Mr. Goertzen will be first, followed by Mr. Brault and by Mr. Allum, and then I will have the last word. So, Mr. Goertzen.
Thank you again for having me here. I believe that we have the best teachers in Canada. Whether you've taught for 2 years or whether you've taught for 20 years, that should be celebrated. No teacher should not be celebrated. We have great trustees, we have great administration, we have wonderful parent councils who are helping make our system stronger. I'm going to upset James by mentioning that I don't always have the opportunity to pick up my son from school, not as often as I would like, but when I do have that opportunity, one of the first things I ask him is, what did you learn in school today? I'm probably not unlike a lot of parents, probably that's one of the first things that many parents ask their children when they're picking them up to school. And it's not just a habit, even though it might seem like it becomes that way sometimes. It is one of the most critical things that we want to know about our sons and our daughters and our kids generally in school in Manitoba. How are they doing? Are they performing well in the classes? So I worry when I see tests like PISA and PSAT that tell us that there are now, in Manitoba, our kids are last in science and literacy and math. That concerns me. It worries me when I talk to teachers and they say they don't always have the professional discretion that they need in the classrooms to do the sorts of things that they feel would improve their students, but I know that they care about their kids in the classroom. It worries me when trustees say that they don't have the autonomy that they need. Investment in education is the most important thing, and it is the most important thing we can do for the future of our province. But that investment has to have results. And results means how are our kids doing in many different ways. And we ask that as parents because it is important. I want to ensure that every child has the same opportunity that I had. I think that it is crucial that we allow our young people, regardless of where they live or their circumstances, to have every opportunity that they can dream of, and education can fulfill their dreams and those opportunities. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity for closing remarks. As I said earlier on, I got into politics because I have a vision that we don't have the poverty that we have in this city and in this province. I believe that we can do much better. And it's not of the fault of our educators. It's really that we need to look at things differently. We need to be bold, and I was impressed by some of the recommendations of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce of the education sections of being bold. We need to take a look at our apprenticeship programs, and I do commend of having the level 1 in school. As an electrician myself in an earlier life, that would have given me a step up of probably 5 years of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and had an opportunity to get into the program earlier. I do commend the New Democratic Party and the government bringing up high school graduation rates. That is commendable. However, I do have a concern of our Indigenous and First Nations population. We need to be better. And as a party, we have a number of members of the Indigenous and Métis population to bring forward their concerns. We have people who our candidate from Point Douglas, the Bannock lady, comes up with what is it really like to live in Point Douglas. And we want to take that experience and bring this vision of Manitoba of a course correction, not a left thinking or a right thinking, but a centralist thinking, being socially responsible, being fiscally responsible, and bring this vision forward. I believe a Liberal Party can do that. I know that we together can make this province better again. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been a great honor.
As a start.
Okay, it's still a great honor for me to have been here today, and I want to reiterate what I said at the beginning, because I've had the chance to work with many of you, or most of you in the room. It's been a great privilege to be the Minister of Education and Advanced Learning. I am passionate about education, but so are you. I see that every day in every meeting that we have, in every classroom. I see it in our teachers who are passionate about outcomes in their classrooms as they deal with the whole child, whether they deal with their academic success, yes, but also their social well-being and their emotional well-being. We ask a lot of teachers each day in and day out. They do a tremendous job. We continue to work with teachers. We didn't fire 700 teachers during the 1990s. In fact, the reality is that we hired 380 more teachers in partnership with you through the small class size initiative alone. I've talked to you about the 4 pillars. The relationship that we have among us, working collaboratively and cooperatively together, has resulted in good things for our kids. I've talked about our commitment to funding and to continue to fund at the rate of economic growth or better, and continue to provide the capital supports that your schools need in order to ensure that our kids are learning in a 21st century environment. We're focused on quality. Our graduation rates have gone up by 15%. They're now at 87%. But let's also remember that our kids are meeting or exceeding expectations at 86%. And in fact, enrollment is at an all-time high in our post-secondary institutions. Across the continuum of education, you can see success. That doesn't mean that we don't have achievement gaps. We certainly do. But I can tell you, every child counts, every Manitoban counts. If this election is about trust, there's only one party you can trust on education, and that's the NDP.
So the last word. First of all, gentlemen, I just want to remind you there is no elephant in the room except a huge memory. These people remember every word you said. And so they'll kind of ask you about keeping your promises and some of the things and so on. But they'll also give you a whole lot of support. And I think if you look out there, you see the way people pay attention attentively to every word. And I want to thank the audience for being that kind of an audience. Thank you so much for that.